Hello and welcome to the Chatterbox Letters podcast. I'm going to be reading my very large chatter-like letter to my listeners. This book, aka Chatter Letter, is called Holes. I hope you will enjoy as I read Holes in audio format. I will be reading chapter by chapter, so it seems interesting as you are curious to know the whole story at its entirety. Introducing Holes by Louis Sachar. I will be reading chapter 4. All right, here is chapter 4. Stanley felt somewhat dazed as the guard unlocked the handcuffs and led him off the bus. He'd been on the bus for over 8 hours. That's a long time. Be careful, the bus driver said as Stanley walked down the steps. Stanley wasn't sure if the bus driver meant for him to be careful going down the steps or if he was telling him to be careful at Camp Green Lake. Thanks for the ride, he said. His mouth was dry and his throat hurt. He stepped onto hard, dry dirt. There was a band of sweat around his wrist where the handcuffs had been. The land was barren and desolate. He could see a few rundown buildings and some tents. Farther away, there was a cabin beneath two tall trees. Those two trees were the only plant life he could see. There weren't even weeds. The guard led Stanley to a small building. A sign on the front. Next page. Said, "You are entering Camp Green Lake Juvenile Correctional Facility." It looked like juvenile, but it's juvenile facility. Next to it was another sign was declared that it was a violation of the Texas Penal Code to bring guns, explosives, weapons, drugs, or alcohol onto the premises. As Stanley read the sign, he couldn't help but to think, well, duh. The guard led Stanley into the building where he felt welcome relief of air conditioning. A man was sitting with his feet on the desk. He turned his head when Stanley and the guards entered, but otherwise didn't move. Even though he was inside, he wore sunglasses and a cowboy hat. He was also held a can of soda, and the sight of it made Stanley even more aware of his own thirst. He waited a while. The bus guard gave the man some papers to sign. That was a lot of sunflower seeds, the bus guard said. Stanley noticed a burlap sack filled with sunflower seeds on the floor next to the desk. "I quit smoking last month," said the man in the cowboy hat. He had a tattoo of a rattlesnake on his arm as he signed his name. The snake's rattle seemed to wiggle. "I used to smoke a pack a day. Now I eat a snack of these every week." The guard laughed. There must have been a small refrigerator behind his desk because the man in the cowboy hat had produced two more cans of soda. For a second, Stanley hoped that one might be for him, but the man gave one to the guard and said the other was for the driver. 9 hours here, and now 9 hours back. The guard grumbled. What a day! Stanley thought about the long, miserable bus ride and felt a little sorry for the guard and the bus driver. The man in the cowboy hat had split sunflower seed shells into a waste paper basket. Then he walked around the desk to Stanley. My name is Mr. Sir, he said. Whatever you speak to me, you must call me by my name. Is that clear? Stanley hesitated. Oh, yes, Mr. Sir, he said, though he couldn't imagine that was really the man's name. You're not in a Girl Scouts anymore, Mr. Sir said. Stanley had to remove his clothes in front of Mr. Sir, who made sure he wasn't hiding anything. He was then given 2 sets of clothes and a towel. Each set considered a long-sleeve orange jumpsuit, an orange t-shirt, and yellow socks. Stanley wasn't sure if the socks had been yellow originally. He was given white sneakers, an orange cap, and canteen made of heavy plastic, which unfortunately was empty. The cap had a piece of cloth sewn on the back of it for neck protection. Stanley got dressed. The clothes smelled like soap. Mr. Sir told him he should wear 1 set to work in and 1 set for relaxation. Laundry was done every 3 days. On the day his work clothes was to be washed, then other set would become his work clothes and he would get clean clothes to wear while resting. You are to dig 1 hole each day, including Saturdays and Sundays. Each hole must be 5 feet deep, 5 foot across in every direction. Your shovel is your measuring stick. Breakfast is served at 4:30. Stanley must have looked surprised because Mr. Sir went, let's go ahead to the next page here, on to explain that they started early to avoid the hardest part of the day. No one is going to babysit you, he added. The longest it takes you to dig, the longer you will be out in the sun. If you dig up anywhere interesting, you are to report it to me or any other counselor. When you finish, the rest of the day is yours. Stanley nodded to show he understood. This isn't a Girl Scout camp, said Mr. Sir. He checked Stanley's backpack and allowed him to keep it. Then he led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. Take a good look around you, Mr. Sir said. What do you see? Stanley looked out across the vast wasteland. The air seemed thick with heat and dirt. Not much, he said, then hastily added, Mr. Sir. Mr. Sir laughed. You see any guard towers? No. How about an electric fence? No, Mr. Sir. There is no fence at all, is there? No, Mr. Sir. You want to run away? Mr. Sir asked him. Stanley looked back at him, unsure what he meant. If you want to run away, go ahead, start running. I'm not going to stop you. Stanley didn't know what kind of game Mr. Sir was playing. I see you're looking at my gun. Don't worry, I'm not going to shoot you. He tapped his holster. This is for yellow spotted lizards. I wouldn't waste my bullet on you. I'm not going to run away, Stanley said. Good thinking, said Mr. Sir. Nobody runs away from here. We don't need a fence. Know why? Because we got only water for 100 miles. You want to run away, you'll be hazard to find in 30 days. You be buzzard food. Stanley could see some kids dressed in orange and carrying shovels dragging themselves towards the tents. You thirsty? Asked Mr. Sir. Yes, Mr. Sir, Stanley said gratefully. Well, you better get used to it. You're going to be thirsty for the next 18 months. Wow, that was kind of brutal, I might say. Not giving somebody a drink of water or anything wet to drink, is kind of cruel to me. But that's part of the story. And that was chapter 4. I hope everyone enjoyed chapter 4. I will be reading chapter 5 the next go round. I hope everybody enjoyed this live broadcast. I will go ahead and let everyone know, like, share, subscribe to my podcast. Hit that notification button to know once I go live. Ring that bell for updates on my podcast. And if you have a chatter letter that you would like to send me to broadcast on my live podcast, send it to the Chatterbox Letters Podcast, Post Office Box 5556, Lakeland, Florida 33807. You can write whatever you want to write in your chatter letter, as long as you keep it clean, your words clear and discreet. All right, I hope I finally get one chatter letter this time. Please, guys, if you're out there and you're watching my live broadcast, please write your chatter letter. Get started to writing your chatter letter and send your chatter letter to me to broadcast on my live podcast. Please do not hesitate to send me your chatter letter. You always, and I mean always, procrastinate and send me your chatter letter today.